I just want to do a quick update on what's going on with this restoration of a Tomos Bullet A3. I just got it kicked over. Turns out the primary issue was down inside, behind the magneto cover, behind the flywheel. The contact points for the electrical were not making contact as I suspected. But just a little rehash on this guy. He was left out in the elements for at least 10 years just to rot. When he was given to me, it was, if you can fix it, you can keep it. There was more rust on this thing than there was bite, which you can still see evidence in the tires and the forks. I haven't really hit that up too much, but I basically took all of the paint off, went down to the bare metal, which I have another video on, and I put another coat of fresh paint on it. I'm probably going to spruce it up a little bit, but let's get into what the hell did they do wrong. Now, over here you notice I've taken off the odometer as well as the speedometer and the lights and the horn. Reason being is what they had done was there was supposed to be some basic, lights and turn signals and whatnot. They just cut the wiring and then wired this thing to be just a straight kickstart. So I tested the capacitor, the coil, and all that, and it all seemed fine, which indicated a problem was likely in the electrical. The spark plug was 21 millimeter, had to get a new socket, and figured, screw it, might as well get a new spark plug, just in case, because when I opened up that magneto cover on the other side, it just vomited rust. So I knew that that flywheel on the other side was going to be a problem. I took the transmission, and unfortunately the muffler that was on here was not the stock. So it was covering the transmission plug down here, so I couldn't get transmission oil out of it. When I finally dropped the muffler off the damn thing, and I was able to drain the fluid, I checked it with the magnet to make sure that there's no metal particulates inside. The original pedal was completely destroyed, and I just got this on for now from my bike just so I can get this thing kicked over. But I wound up trying to get some trans fluid in here, and the carburetor was in the way. Now the carburetor was a non-stock, and I got an aftermarket part, like a replica of this one, but it turns out that this was the wrong one anyway, so had to wind up ghetto rigging some spring steel from a old tape measure to kind of make a collar so this would fit on correctly, because this is not the correct carburetor. And on top of that, the intake filter right here, where there's supposed to be like a plastic shroud over here that protects from too much garbage being sucked into this. Now this original carburetor, or what I thought was the original carburetor on this thing, didn't even have a screen, so it was in a really bad shape. So what I had to do is take aluminum foil tape in order to create this little podge job to keep at least the screen on, because this piece here and this piece here are where the footrest plates are sitting. Not too important to me at the moment, but a working carburetor is. Didn't exactly want to chop this off just to make a carburetor fit. So on top of that, this replacement replica carburetor, I needed to take pieces from the original carburetor because this had a sort of a metal pipe coming out, which shortened the overall length of the cable going to the throttle controls. And when I came up and tried to fix the throttle controls, I came to the realization that this thing has no return at all. So this whole throttle assembly rusted to hell, the buttons weathered to hell, the control mechanisms weathered to hell. In fact, in order to get any of this off, I have to get the grips off. So far it's been a major labor of love, but every time I've heard this engine kick over, even when I first got it, it just all sounded like it wanted to come back to life. And you know what, I couldn't say no, and I just now got it back to life. Still need quite a bit of work on the electrical, get all the wiring cleaned up. The tank is rusted to hell and back again, but luckily I have a few inline filters. Need to completely rewire and set up the throttle cable, front and rear brake cable, electrical for front light, rear light, install a couple of mirrors, make this thing, of course, install the seat, which I have yet to decide on a paint job. And I think I'm probably going to wind up replacing these shocks because the rubber grommets inside are rotting away. So if I not replace the the rubber grommets. If anything, the rubber grommets replace the whole hydraulic rear suspension on the shocks. The front use spring suspension. And another quirk that we had with this is that if you notice, some of these engine bolts are on right, or rather this one's on backwards, because they didn't use the correct carburetor. The engine bolt, mounting bolt, wound up running into the carburetor. So the only way to get this carburetor to actually fit in here in any way, shape, or form was to turn the engine mounting bolt around, and luckily doing so did not run into the magneto plate or the chain guard or any of the such. So still got a little bit of ways to go, but at least she's chooching.